beloved. I'm Monica Bermudez. I am your host for Ascended Earth, the Transfiguration of the New Human podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about Plato's Allegory of the Cave. And so, Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher from 427 to 328 BC. And so, what a lot of people don't realize that not only was he like a Greek philosopher, but he was also a mystic. And he gained a lot of his insight and information from the ancient mystery schools of ancient Egyptian temples and pyramids. A lot of information which is not publicly disclosed, which is archived in a lot of the mystical studies and information. And I personally have studied philosophy as a minor degree. So I study a lot of the philosophers like Socrates and Plato. And I found that whenever I read their philosophy, I understood it so well because it felt like information that I grew up with, which it was because just like I grew up with the mystery schools and initiation into them, which stem from a lot of the ancient Egyptian temples and pyramids, I felt like I was reading a lot of my own mystical studies. And so Plato actually received a lot of his knowledge also through Socrates. And Socrates was one of his mentors and teachers. Socrates was well known for his information on reincarnation, and he really emphasized it a lot, which was an uncommon thing to talk about during the time, during that time frame, during ancient Greece at the time. So he ended up getting in trouble a lot with the religions and all that. So the Plato's allegory of the cave is so appropriate for our modern times now as we are into this new earth. And it has a correlation with the ascension and the awakening that we're all going through. So I'm just going to talk about the story behind it and talk about its deep meaning and symbolism, as well as share the stages for this allegory, this cave, and just see, where we are collectively, which stage we find ourselves at this time. And so it comes from the Republic of Plato, which was some books, that Plato had published then. It's filled with, the story itself is filled with a lot of symbolism and deep meaning of our enlightenment and ascension. And so we are, really it's like a big symbolism of the matrix of the world of illusion. And so to jump into this story, so the story is set on prisoners who are chained up to a wall in a cave, a dark cave. And supposedly there is this fire that is behind them, but they don't see the fire. They only see what's in front of them is this wall, and they're in complete darkness. So the only bit of light that there is, right, is this fire. And they can see some of the shadows, being cast. So all they see is shadow. And so this becomes their world. And they think that is the only thing that they, perceive. So that, is their whole world. And so they get really comfortable in that position, being in that way. Sounds a bit familiar, right? So then one day, this change comes for one of the prisoners. And so he has been set free. So he ends up going, being led out, he turns around, he sees the fire. So his perception has changed at that point. But he then ends up, being guided outside the cave where he ends up seeing a whole different world and seeing the sunlight, right? There's light out there. So that is, very big symbolism in regards to the awakening that we're going through right now. So let's break it down into the different stages, right? Stage one, the prisoners held in the cave. So they really, you can consider this to be limited knowledge, limited perception, right? Because they're only limited to what they see in that moment. Stage two, the prisoner is freed. And so they, see for the first time another angle, which is, seeing the fire. And at first, it's quite an adjustment, of a change, but they're not certain if they really want to continue at this point. So there is a bit of resistance. And so they think, they want to go back to where they were, where they feel more comfortable being, chained up to this wall. So stage three is the prisoner ascends, right? The prisoner is led on the path to go outside the cave into the ascension, right? And stepping into the sun. And again, there is this resistance because not knowing where this is leading, there's a lot of unknowns, who knows where they're heading and where this path is leading them. And so he's beginning now to feel this change in himself or herself. And there's this big, in that resistance, there is that change that is occurring as well. In stage four, the prisoner is now on the surface of the world. So now they've come out of the cave and they can see clearly now. They're the whole world and they get an accurate knowledge of themselves and the world around them. And now they see this whole other perception of the cave itself. So in that renewed state, right, he realizes not so bad to be on the surface world, to be in this whole other world, outside the cave, that the last stage on this one is that the prisoner now wants to go back to the cave, but only to convince others of this whole other world. And so what this story reminds me of is also the movie The Matrix, because The Matrix is also about this, greater awakening and the stages, of our own ascension in the world. And so, it's quite I can think of these stages as being our stages of ascension, because ascension is really about our expansiveness, right? And making the changes in our life, going through these eclipse energy or major transformational changes. And at times, when it comes to change, it can be very uncomfortable because there's still like some unknowns out there that we don't know where we're being guided, where we're being taken, and where the path is leading us. Where it all starts, though, where that freedom starts, is really within our own heart calling us to step on this different paths of our, greater ascension and awakening, and to only discover that in this other world is your deep wisdom and your higher self and the divinity that you hold within yourself, of your greater powers, of your authenticity and the truth of who you really are. And so that's what this these stages are really talking about in this whole story that Plato wrote, so long ago. We are, in these really intense, high vibrational frequencies of energy that are starting to break free a lot of the prisoner mindset, the victimhood, right? And just breaking free from those things that have been holding us back and being trapped in this illusional world where we think that this is our all and everything. But there's much more inside of us that than we realize, but really stepping from a limited human mindset to an unlimited divine source within ourselves, which we hold the greater universe within us. And so these are, you could relate these and apply these in your life in many different aspects, right? Because sometimes we let our emotions hold us, as prisoners. Like if we get so reactionary to certain things and not really pay attention or be aware of those reactionary outbursts of emotional tendencies that may occur, and just being consciously aware of it. And so, a lot of what trigger is also healing. It's an activation. But sometimes we may find ourselves imprisoned by certain emotions where we feel so attached to it. And so, in a way, when the prisoner is held, there is this form of attachment also, attachment to others, attachments to certain locations, and attachments to certain work environments, and attachments to how we identify ourselves with in the eyes of others. And so there is this level of um, being afraid, right, of fear to do something that will take us into this unknown, not knowing where it's all leading. And that is where the trust comes in. And so at some point where the stage 3, right, where the prisoner is ascending, there's still some of that resistance in there because we want to keep things the way they are, no change whatsoever, because we get so much into our comfort zone that we don't know what else is coming, in this other pathway. But in that moment, though, you're also at the same time discovering other aspects of you. And so it also brings about this change within yourself. So I would say that collectively right now, in the majority where we are in the stage is a bit in the stage 3. And so there is some resistance, right, of things, but at the same time, a lot of us, want to change. So some people are, I would say, in the stage 4, whereas, a few that who are in the stage 5 are the ones who I consider to be the great awakeners, who have been awakened in their own way and shaken, and they want to go back and help all these other ones who are in their stage of still being in this imprisonment or still being asleep, in other words, and just help them to really wake up to their own heart calling and embrace that change, and letting them know that it's okay to let go. And so these stage 5, I would consider to be the great awakeners themselves, and going back to assist many of the others who are still imprisoned in their own way. And it's not to say, though, that it's still perfection at that stage or anything like that. It's just a story, a symbolism, just say, of understanding another version of the Great Awakening and our ascension. And so these, can be applied in your life as well, in other areas, whether that is your mental imprisonment or emotional imprisonment, or any other situation you may find yourself in. So this can help assist with understanding more of where we are, and reaching our own enlightenment, illumination on the path forward of our own ascension, and stepping more into these higher frequencies of energy of this new earth frequency that we find ourselves right now. So you can always go back and revisit these and just take away from it what applies in your life and what changes are needed at this time, and how to, break free from any imprisonment that you may have, created yourself. I myself have, gone through these stages myself, and I still look at my life still in these areas where I still find that I may still be imprisoning myself. Are there thoughts, that have been playing back and forth that have been keeping me in my lack mindset? And one of the biggest ones that I really worked hard on was my whole mindset about the financial system, and being more in this abundant mindset rather than a lack mindset. And so I do pay really close attention to it, because I've had like a million vows of poverty that I've been engraved and programmed from the many past lives. So I had to really like break it down into these different areas. And everybody's going to be different, right, with how they perceive things. And so what ascension and awakening really is also about expanding our perception in our own conscious awareness as well. So I will leave you with that. And I'm sending you love. And I will see you on the new earth and catch you at another episode. Bye for now.